right, let's see. Here we go again. Hey, David. Can you hear me? No? Uh-oh. Let's disconnect and try again. Give me 1 minute.
I can hear you now.
I can hear you too. There you go.
Yeah, right. Okay, let me get back into position.
Great.
I don't know what's happening, but at
Yeah.
least it's working now. Okay. Sorry, guys. We'll get this going. It seemed to be the only way to make it work was to run downstairs closer to the Wi-Fi box. Right.
All good.
All good. I'll get in shot now. Okay. Right. Let's go.
All right, give me a second. I'm just going to pin this thing here.
Sounds good, man.
All right. You can see me. I can see you. We're in business. You can hear me. Everybody, you guys, let us know. Can you hear us? Hey, Scotch Racer, how you doing? Just let us know if you can hear us. Give us a thumbs up.
Some familiar names.
Oh, you know the Scotch Racer, do you?
I know most of these guys.
Yeah. I know you get around. All right, I see a thumbs up. Great. Awesome. Well, you know what? Let's give it a minute to get a couple people more, and we'll start. What's shaking, brother? Doing good?
Hey, yeah.
Fantastic, nice.
What's that?
These guys are saying hello, so just give them a little hello back. That's all.
Totally.
Hey, David, I don't know if you've seen this. Look at this.
Ah, man, that's
I got it made a couple weeks ago. Tonight's Poison. Glenn glasses.
We need to get some of these engraved on the other side with that.
I like that. Yeah. That'll be awesome. That'll be amazing.
The only problem with these is they're so big, you kind of end up pouring a lot of Ardbeg in them. I guess that's not a problem.
More the merrier, I guess.
I have this as well.
Oh, cool. I like those mini ones. Yeah.
Drink responsibly.
Scotch Racer wants one, he says.
Hey, we can probably make that happen.
We could definitely make it happen. I have a list of good buddies on here who are really good influencers. I'm sure we could put together a box and get them out for the marketing.
I have a stash of them downstairs, so we can make that happen.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. It's 7 o'clock. I'm sure more people will log in, and I'm sure more people will be watching this later on. For those of you who are here or logging in later and watching this video, we have a very special guest today talking about Ardbeg. David Blackmore from his house in Texas, and I'm here in New Jersey. The beauty of social media. David, say hello.
Hey. Hi, everyone.
So, David, let's start this off the right way. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so originally born and raised in Edinburgh in Scotland, and I have to admit, until I was about 23, 24 years old, I definitely was not a Scotch whiskey fan in any way, shape or form, but I kind of saw the light when I was 23, 24, and from there I realized that I needed to immerse myself in the industry and the wonders of Scotch whiskey.
Very cool. So how did you end up working with Ardbeg and the company Hennessy?
So I started off working for an events company that the guy, my boss, who actually got me into Scotch whiskey ran. And I did a few tastings and sat in the back of a few tastings with whiskey experts and ambassadors and really started getting the bug for it there. And then I joined the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, initially as a bartender in the Leith venue, the Vaults. About 6 months, 8 months there, and they moved me down to London. And I did about 2 years working there in London, doing events all around the UK. And that's around about when I met Dr. Bill Lumsden of the Glenmorangie Company at Whisky Live London years ago. And I basically bugged him for almost a year saying, I want a job, until he caved in and gave me a job. That's pretty much
fun.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the questions I was going to ask you to see is to what kind of advice you would give to someone that was interested in becoming a brand ambassador,
Yeah,
such as yourself, I guess. But you just answered it. Just bug the person that you meet, huh?
I think it's persistence. Do your homework and follow. If it's ask yourself this question: is it really your passion? And if it's not, that's fine. But you should do in life. Your job should be your passion. And I realized that it was the first thing. The whiskey industry was the first thing that I'd really got passionate about. I've got a marine biology degree, marine environmental biology degree, and I loved it, but I wasn't passionate about it. This was the first thing that I really got passionate about, and I realized that's the way forward. Do what you're passionate about, and you won't feel like you've really worked a day in your life.
Gotcha. Very cool. Very cool. Tell us a little bit about something about yourself that we would not know otherwise. We run into you at events all the time. So something personal.
Well, prior to getting into the whiskey industry, I've had various weird and wonderful jobs. I have been a professional gold panner for a while. I was an extra in a film called Gregory's Two Girls, which was the sequel to if you're Scottish, you'll have heard of Gregory's Girl. It was quite a famous film in the 80s.
Is it available on Netflix?
It probably isn't. It shouldn't be available anywhere ever. But I am in it, and kind of ironically, I guess it was a sign of things to come. I played the part of a character at a wedding who'd maybe had a couple too many glasses of champagne. That was my role, and I played it well.
We do that now every day for a living, except it's whiskey in the systems.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, in that film, all day long, every single take, I was drinking warm ginger ale all day long. Yeah, it was.
So, needless to say, do you drink any scotch with ginger now, or you're done with ginger forever?
No, I when I first got into the Scotch industry, I was and just kind of into it personally. I was very conservative about how I drank my Scotch. It was dash of water or neat, and I've kind of come round to the idea that Scotch whiskey. I still drink primarily my single malt neat and with a dash of water, but from time to time, certainly in the summer down here in Texas, a couple of cubes or a splash of ginger ale. If I'm out in my yard or at the community pool, I'm not just drinking neat whiskey. It's just too hot.
Yeah, exactly. You got to adjust your temperature or the whiskey depending on the mood and the environment you're around. Yeah, and the time of the year it is.
And good whiskey, there's good whiskey and then there's rare whiskey, not always the same thing. I'm not sure I would put a really rare whiskey with ginger ale just because, it's I don't have very much of it. There's plenty of good whiskey that's not so rare that, you can be a little bit more relaxed about making cocktails with it, I think.
Gotcha.
So I personally wouldn't be making cocktails with some of the committee releases of Ardbeg just because even I don't get very much of it. Ardbeg 10, one of my people are going to hate me for this. One of my favorite things to do with Ardbeg 10 is make a Bloody Mary with it. Love it. It's brilliant.
Very cool. Yeah, a little peatiness in there. That'd be cool. I've never had a peaty one before. That's cool. So since you've been around the industry for so many years, how have you seen the whiskey industry change or whiskey come along?
Yeah, I remember the early days of working for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and my friends and more the friends of friends of mine looked at me when I said what I was doing and looked at me like I was crazy. And they said, "Oh, what are you drinking that? Well, these are Scottish guys. What are you drinking that for? That's an old man's drink. Nobody drinks Scotch whiskey anymore." And wow, how things have changed. Thank the Lord. Scotch whiskey is booming, as is whiskey from all around the world, and rightly so. It's a quality product, and it really heartens me to see other people excited and going down the journey of discovering single malt, Scotch and bourbon, Japanese whiskey, whatever it is. Of course, I'd love you to like my whiskeys, and I hope you do. But it's just fun to see people who have that light bulb go off in their head and get it, because it's an acquired taste. It takes a bit of time for most people.
Yeah. This might be an obvious answer, but I'm interested to hear your reply. What's the best part of your job?
If you'd asked me that when I first started, I would have said the travel. And that's very far from the best part of the job now, all these years later. It's just the necessary evil of the job, actually. The best part of the job is, and always will be, the whiskey. And right alongside that are the people that I get to meet and work with every day. So the people and the whiskey that I get to deal with, I'm so fortunate.
Very cool. Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And this might be a loaded gun question, but what's your favorite Ardbeg?
You know, we talked about this earlier. You tipped me off about this one. And I was my head was racing through all the answers I could possibly give. And, you know, just between when we were doing this little test and when we went live, I realized I had been giving you BS answers. The real answer, if I'm honest, what would I grab off my shelf of Ardbeg? Given the choice right now, my impulse would be Ardbeg Corrie Vrecken. Nothing rare. The current bottling of Corrie Vrecken. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Hardcore.
Do you have a bottle there that you could show the people watching the label for?
Quite a junkie.
All good.
Do you know what I have got? Just to show off. But this was the first Corrie Vrecken, right there. That was the committee release Corrie Vrecken.
Wow.
Back in the day. And this was wonderful stuff. And Corrie Vrecken's always been fantastic, but I think for whatever reason, in the last about year or so, the current readily available bottlings of Corrie Vrecken are back to the really stellar quality of the committee release. And the difference is this, you have to spend quite a bit at auction, you know, off the auction site in the UK to get your hands on. The current Corrie Vrecken you can get anywhere, and it's really good. That would be my number one pick, I think. I love the Supernovas. I love.
I'll have to find one at auction one day and try it.
Yeah, don't need to. Just buy just regular bottle of Corrie
Put the current release. Okay, all right.
Good stuff.
Okay, that's pretty consistent. All right, gotcha.
Yeah.
For the people watching, there's going to be a nice giveaway that we put together, thanks to people from Ardbeg, such as David. We have some really interesting stuff. You see a nice polo shirt I'm wearing. It's from Nike, branded. We're going to be giving that away. I'll let you know at the end how that's going to work. But
hopefully not actually the shirt you're wearing.
No, it's going to be brand new, sealed with the tags. Yeah.
We're going to have two of them. On that.
Yeah, we're going to actually have two of them, one male and a female polo. So that'd be kind of cool. And we have some other cool stuff, branded Ardbeg stuff that'll leave us surprises. We'll basically announce at the very end before we get off. So let's get into the whiskey. Do you wanna taste the whiskey now, or do you want to talk about the whiskey, or before we taste it? How do you want to do it, David?
I don't know. I mean, whatever you feel. I can take you through the whiskey now, or what do people think?
Hey, I'm getting thirsty, but at the same time, we could learn about it, the history of it, because a lot of the people who are watching this might not have the whiskey. I know some of the people did purchase it, and they're going to taste along with us. And I'm sure the video can be watched later on. I will post this video on YouTube also, so that way this will be there forever for you guys to basically taste along with David. So let's maybe talk about the history of Ardbeg.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, Ardbeg's actually a pretty old distillery. Official foundation date is 1815. Although, you know, being out on the remote island of Islay, 1815 was really just the date that Ardbeg went legal. There's a lot of evidence that the hillsides around the village of Ardbeg were just, you know, dotted with illegal moonshine stills way before 1815. But anyway, 1815, Ardbeg goes legit. If you go back to about 100 years ago, 203 years ago from today, Ardbeg had actually grown to be the largest distillery by output on the island of Islay and sustained a healthy community at Ardbeg village. You know, it was a proper community with a post office, shops. There was a bowling alley, all sorts of things going on. A real vibrant community. Having said that, Ardbeg's been kind of bounced around various owners over the years, and it came to the heady days of the 1970s when Scotch whisky was booming, but it wasn't single malt. It was blended brands, and those brands were using various single malts as core ingredients, and Ardbeg was much sought after because of its intense peatiness. You could really affect the flavour and style of a blend with just a little bit of Ardbeg. So a very valuable single malt. Unfortunately, the 1980s came around, and suddenly people stopped drinking Scotch whisky, blended Scotch, and nobody had really got into single malt yet. So the previous owners of Ardbeg closed it, shuttered it in 1981, and it lay completely closed till 89. And then kind of it was mothballed with small amounts of distillation through from 1990 right up to 97. And in 97, it was put up for sale. And that's where the Glenmorangie Company involvement comes in, because Glenmorangie ended up being the winning bidder for Ardbeg. And what we bought was a pretty rundown distillery in a shocking state of disrepair. And we're still working on fixing parts of the distillery all these years later. But we'd like to think, hopefully, that it's in pretty safe hands these days. And we're doing our absolute best, I can tell you that. Everybody at Ardbeg, at the Glenmorangie Company, has nothing but the best intentions for this distillery. And the amount of money we're putting into it, we've actually spent many times more renovating the distillery, bringing it back to life, than we did on buying it. It's an amazing thought.
Yeah, that happens. That's happened to, I'm sure, some of us.
Yeah.
Buy a fixer-upper, and then it's like, I might as well buy a new house.
Exactly. Yeah,
I remember back in the day,
it was definitely a fixer-upper. And back in the day, though, it's so great to see it. Back in the day, as I said, 100 years ago, the Ardbeg produced about 1.1, 1.2 litres of spirit. And we finally got Ardbeg back up to that level about a year or two ago, the same level. And it's now distilling. We're producing the maximum amount that the distillery, as it's currently was designed 100 years ago, to produce. So you may have seen online, we've got various expansion plans for the future, so that you can all get your Ardbeg still, basically.
Gotcha. Very cool. Very cool. I'm sure there is a facility or a place where people can visit when they go there, tourist-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. Ardbeg Visitor Centre has won Visitor Centre of the Year many times. Jackie, our Visitor Centre manager, has won Visitor Centre Manager of the Year many times. The Old Kiln Cafe, I used to be able to say confidently it was the best place to eat on Islay. Thankfully, the culinary standards on Islay have absolutely shot up, but it's one of the absolute best places, certainly for lunch on the island. Of course, you can buy lots of wonderful Ardbeg there too. Yeah, if you go to Ardbeg, to the Old Kiln Cafe, look out for the buns, which are often made with some of the grist from the smoky barley. So you actually get smoky flavor in those buns. Fantastic.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's get into the peat versus a peated whiskey versus a non-peated whiskey. What would you say a simplified way of explaining to some of the watchers how you explain that?
So if you live in the northern parts or northeast of the US, or actually anywhere, northwest as well, or in Canada, you're probably fairly familiar with what peat is. It's semi-fossilized vegetation. And the consistency of peat will change based on what that vegetation was, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years ago. So peat isn't all exactly the same, but the principle is the same. This stuff is semi-fossilized. It's usually waterlogged. And if you stand on it, you'll end up going up to your waist in it sometimes. I've learned the hard way on Islay.
Is that why the big green shoes? I've seen, the shoes which are really, really...
Yeah, the welly boots. Yeah. They don't help a lot because all they do is get stuck completely in the mud and then you're trapped. There you go. You almost need that. We should make the peat equivalent of snowshoes. There you go. There's a brilliant idea. Ardbeg snowshoes for the peat bogs. You heard it here first. But if you dig it out of the ground and in big bricks and lay it up on top of the peat bogs in a stack, you can dry it. And once it's dry, it's a fuel. And because it's not as fossilized and compacted as coal, it's not as an efficient fuel. So when you burn it, it burns with a lot of smoke. It doesn't burn very efficiently. And that's what we want. Originally, peat was basically the fuel that would have been used to heat people's homes, to cook over, because certainly if you go to Islay, there's very, very few trees on Islay. So it was the only form of fuel, and hence why it was used to make whiskey all over Scotland. And in parts of Scotland where the Industrial Revolution never really got there in the early days with coal, they stuck to it. So Isla stuck to it, Orkney stuck to it, Skye stuck to it, the Campbelltown Peninsula, all these places you can't get a trainload of coal to. They stuck with the old ways, whereas a lot of the rest of Scotland switched over to coal, and now obviously natural gas or whatever heat source they're currently using. But Isla has kept that much more traditional way of using peat, which burns with all this smoke. And if you put a piece of salmon on a cedar plank on your grill, you'll know how the smoke billows off the bottom of the cedar, and it adheres to the fats, the phenols, the molecules in the smoke. It adheres to the fats in the salmon, and it makes the salmon taste smoky. Same principle, that the smoke, the phenols from the smoke molecules from the peat adhere to the lipids and fats in the barley. And there's some I prepared earlier. I don't know if I tip it too much, you won't be able to see it, but there's a bit of Ardbeg barley there. I know you can't smell it. We don't have smell-o-vision, but it's very different from, say, Glenmorangie barley, which has almost no smokiness to it at all. Ardbeg's 55 to 65 parts per million phenols in the barley, which, you know, other distilleries have done limited editions that have gone even higher, as have we, up to 100 and beyond. But as it stands, Ardbeg uses day in, day out the most heavily peat smoked barley, and it really sets, you know, before you get into anything, before you even start fermenting or distilling, so not only way before you start maturing, it changes fundamentally the new spirit, that you've got this underbed of smokiness from the very beginning. Fun stuff.
Cool. Very cool, man. That's a really nice detailed version. I actually learned a few things that I didn't know before. I wish I could smell that barley live. Next time we do this, you got to ship me a pre-pack, and I got to ship you a pre-pack of stuff.
Yeah, we should definitely do that.
Yeah. We're talking today about Anoa. So what's the correct way to pronounce this? I say Anoa. Sometimes I say N-O. So what's the correct way?
You know, not being from the Western Isles, being from Edinburgh, I'm not in the best place to really tell you, because it is a Scots Gaelic, West Coast Scots Gaelic name that will change based on your accent almost. But Anno is as close as I can get, and what most people in the company have said. The name comes from the Mull of O, which is a peninsula. If you've been to Islay and you've come in on the ferry to Port Ellen, if you turn left, or when you come into Port Ellen on the ferry, when you look to your left, you'll see a big craggy, cliffy peninsula, and that's the Mull of O. And it really kind of protects all three of us South Shore distilleries, Lagavulin, Lafroig, and Ardbeg, protects us from the full brute force of the storms that come across the Atlantic. And arguably, if the Mull of O wasn't there, you know, these iconic, you know, whitewashed distilleries right on the waterfront, you know, there would have been a storm between 1815 and now that would have washed that all away if it hadn't been for the relative shelter created by the Mull of O.
Gotcha. Very, very cool. The cask or casks, which are these being used for?
The whole idea about Ardbeg Anno was, you know, we wanted to create, and it's the first new. It's not a limited edition. That's the first thing to be clear about. You know, we come out with our annual Ardbeg Day release and the committee version of that each year, and they're kind of treats for our fan club. You know, because, you know, myself included, I look forward to that every year. It's like Christmas Day almost.
Yeah.
But we haven't had a permanent addition to the Ardbeg range in about 10 years, and we thought it was about time. And we thought what we'd learned from doing a lot of tastings and hearing feedback from our fans was that Ardbeg, to the people that, so those of you and I that are already you know, converted, Ardbeg 10 is wonderful, but to newbies to the smoky world, it's a bit of a shock to the system, you know. And I've seen this if I'm tasting beginner smoky malt drinkers on the Ardbeg range. Ardbeg 10 is just a bit of a shock. Ardbeg Ugadal, usually flavor-wise, is the one that people who are new really warm to, but then the alcohol strength scares them, and frankly maybe a bit the price point too on Ugadal. So we wanted to bring something that still was clearly Ardbeg. We weren't going to dumb it down in any means, but we wanted to bring something that was just a little bit more welcoming to those people who were right on the fence about whether smoky Islay whiskey was for them. So it's matured in 3 types of barrels, actually. And first of all, finishing doesn't seem to work at Ardbeg, really. Despite the fact that Dr. Bill is the man for finishing with Glenmorangie. This is full maturation. So partly fully matured in ex-bourbon barrels, American oak, partly fully matured second silo in new charred American oak, virgin American oak, and then a third full maturation in former Pedro Jimenez sherry casks. So you can imagine if we were to taste those 3 separately, very, very different whiskies, bringing them together and just in the sort of modern way of just vatting them together, you could easily have had a very angular, disjointed whiskey. So yeah. We went back to our bosses in Scotland and in Paris and said, well, Bill did, I've got a plan to make sure that this whiskey is really integrated, but I need a lot of money. And we built in one of the, up until now, unused buildings, unrenovated parts of the distillery, a gathering vat made of inert, used French oak, a very old-fashioned way of bringing whiskey together. And so those 3 disparate parts come together and they sit there for about 3 months. Don't quote me on that because it's early days. We're still getting our head around Anno. But that gathering vat is only going to be used for making Anno moving forward. And it just makes it lets it breathe in a way that a stainless steel tank would never do. And it just lets it be silky and integrated. So hopefully, if you've tried it already, you'll know that it's a really classic Ardbeg, if you ask me.
Very cool. Couple of housekeepings real quick, since a few people left, a few people came on. First of all, Ho Arde just joined. He is an amazing, amazing artist. And I also run another account called Simply Whisky with 2 Y's at the end. And that just hit 5,000 followers. So on there, I'm running a contest. And Ho Arde is helping me create an Ardbeg LED lamp, which is going to change in colors. He's done one with me for a couple other brands before, so we're going to use that to give out to one of our followers on Simply Whisky. Also, he's creating some Glenmorangie candles, which is going to be, they're going to cut the glass and they're going to make them into candles. We're going to be giving those out also. That's besides what we're giving out tonight here. That's separate. If you go to Simply Whisky with 2 Y's at the end, and follow that along. You'll see the information there. The contest will end this weekend, so make sure you do that. We have a question from Hondo57. Yeah. He asks, and I think you kind of touched on this already, but let's just get a firm answer. What is a good peated whiskey to start with if you are not experienced with Peated Single Malt out of Ardbeg line?
It would be the Ardbeg Anno would be the one. That's what we've really designed it for. And I'd love to know your thoughts. I hope you like it.
Yeah. So Honda 57, this is the one, brother. The one we're tasting today, the one you see in the advertisement. This is the one. You got to go out and get it. And depending on the store you get it from, it could retail from anywhere from, I've seen it for 65, 80, depends on the range, depending on if you want a discount liquor store or not. But typically about 670, I would say, is the average, right, on this bottle?
About that, yeah. Maybe a little bit less, depending where you are.
Okay, depends on where you are. And the alcohol by volume on this is a little higher, too. It's 46%.
46, but I mean that's a little higher compared to the kind of entry-level scotches and certainly the blended scotches. But for Ardbeg, that's our lowest ABV, and that's one of the things that we as I said, we weren't going to dumb this Ardbeg down. It wasn't about that at all. It was about maintaining our high standards, not alienating our core fans, hopefully, making a whiskey that they'll still love, but at the same time trying to make something that just appeals a little bit to those people that we've all tried to convince. If we're peaty whiskey fans, and you never quite see that light go off, and hopefully this is the whiskey that.
Correct.
Now I get it.
Hey, Whiskey Library DC, welcome aboard, man. Listen, we got David Blackmore here. Everybody watching, if you have any questions, feel free to put them down here in the comment section below, and we'll try to answer them the best we can. We're just talking about the history of Ardbeg for those of you guys logging on, and we haven't even started tasting yet. So if you guys have a bottle of Ardbeg, hopefully you know. If not, at least some sort of Ardbeg, please taste along with us in about 5-10 minutes. We'll be tasting that very soon. Again, David Blackmore here. We will have some giveaways at the end, so please hang tight. We will have some more giveaways coming up.
You see, I have here a little. These are actually very granulated. This is a little pot of Ardbeg peat.
Huh.
Little. It doesn't ever look like this on the island, but this is that's regular. It's been kind of made into little granules almost, peat.
Yeah, be careful where you drop them. Your wife is going to yell at you dropping them in your bar at the house.
Okay, I know, right? I was going to get a little blowtorch and light some, but I thought you guys can't smell it, and I'm at risk of setting my smoke alarms off.
Got you.
I don't know if you guys can see. I've got two lapel badges on. The bottom one is the Ardbeg Day 2018.
Nice.
Badge. So if you're not an Ardbeg committee member, you should join up. It's free. We won't bombard you with emails. We're just not quite that organized, to be honest. We'll send you a couple of things a year and hopefully an invite to a party once a year. But the badge above, see this one here. This is actually something very, very. I'm very proud to have, and I'm trying to reach out to them to do some more work with them. The Mull of O, the peninsula, actually has a monument on it called the American Monument. It looks like almost like a stone-built lighthouse or something. Big monument. And actually, a tragic story. 100 years ago, this year, and that's what this is about, was the end of the First World War. And in the final days of the First World War, 2 U.S. troop-carrying ships were torpedoed right off the coast of Islay, right by the Mull of O, and with massive loss of U.S. life, actually. So that's why the monument's there, and it's a pretty significant place on Islay. So if you've never been to Islay, before you go to any of the distilleries, you should take yourself a trip up to the Mull of O and see that first. And that's what that's about. It's the shape of the island of Islay, but it's also a poppy for remembrance for World War I. So there you go.
Cool, very cool.
That's about, yeah.
This might be a continuation to Hondo's question. There's, 15, 20 years ago, you look back, and that's when I started drinking peated whiskeys and fell in love with them. There weren't a lot. Now there's so many.
Yeah.
So what would you say makes Ardbeg stand out from the rest?
First of all, I think it's great that there's so many whiskeys and smoky whiskeys out there. It's great to see the popularity allowing new distilleries to open and old distilleries to reopen. And I, as you can probably see behind me, I don't just drink Ardbeg and Glenmorangie. I wouldn't be a true whiskey fan if I did only drink those two. Having said that, I love Ardbeg and Glenmorangie, and particularly Ardbeg. For me, what it is that however extreme the smokiness gets, there's always a level of balance and complexity in Ardbeg. So there's a weird looking thing coming off the top of the line arm on the spirit still at Ardbeg. It's called a copper purifier. And not to get too geeky and technical, but it's the only one on Islay. And what we think it does is it recirculates some of the heaviest, least volatile elements of distillation back round for almost a 2.1, 2.2 times distillation on that spirit still. And it allows us to peat smoke our barley to frankly crazy levels. And at the same time have this kind of paradox, the peaty paradox of having real intense smoke, but a level of complexity and balance in all Ardbegs that sometimes you miss sometimes with even slightly less peat smoked other smoky whiskies. That's what it does it for me. There's always this characteristically at the same time creamy but drying, almost like coal dust note. There's medicinal, but it's not. It's more like smoked meat. This the balance in Ardbeg. That'd be my thing.
Hey, you answered it perfectly. I think that's perfect. We talked about the pen a little bit. You talked about some limited releases. Ultimately, I know that's pretty much Ardbeg Day. Do you want to talk about Ardbeg Day a little bit to our watchers?
Literally, the Ardbeg Committee is our fan club, I guess. And the reason we call it the Ardbeg Committee is a kind of tongue-in-cheek look back at Islay, I guess. Islay's this tiny, tiny island, 3,300 inhabitants, but there's something like 100 and something committees on the island. There's committees for everything. So we might call it the society or the club. We'll add another committee to Islay with the Ardbeg committee. We like to kind of treat our Ardbeg fans in the committee once a year at least, and reach out and talk to them. It gives us all an opportunity to get out there and meet you all again. If we have, I'm an ambassador, so I get to see people all year round. But some of the whiskey makers and some of the people in the company don't get to do that as often. So it gives us an opportunity to really meet with our fan club and treat them and have a fun time. That's all it's about. And we like coming out with, this is empty, just before you all get too jealous. This year's Ardbeg Grooves.
Yeah.
Sadly empty 4.5 litre dummy bottle. But hey, one can dream.
Well, we could take a cup of regular juice and throw it in there, and have a nice party with it. I mean, reminds me of my Glenmorangie 1.75 original friends that we use sometimes for party.
Yeah, absolutely.
It looks like we have a question here. Whiskey Library DC. How you doing, brother? Hey. Is there a fear of running low on peat or the peat changing over time due to additional use, increased volume, or environmental factors?
From what I've heard, what I've been told, just the one main peat bog on Islay that's being used by Port Ellen Malting, so therefore by servicing it's the lion's share of the peat being used on Islay. I think we've got something like 50,000 years worth of peat just in that one bog, and that's just a tiny part of the island. So I don't think there's really any practical concerns about peat running out or the style of the peat changing. The way that's cut, it actually it will regenerate itself and rebound up, and lower levels of the peat will come to the top. And that's always happened on Islay, even when locals cut it for their domestic use in their fireplaces and such like. So I don't think there's much of a concern there. I think other environmental factors will have changed the world somewhat before the peat bogs of Islay run out.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add before we get to the tasting? You want to talk anything else about Ardbeg? Anything we missed?
I guess I don't know. I think we're. I'm
thirsty.
Questions.
So, guys, feel free to keep asking questions. There's no stupid question, honestly. I'm learning as I go. Learned some things today. I can't wait to rewatch this tomorrow or over the weekend and take all the detailed information that David had provided us. So please, feel free to ask any questions. Again, towards the end of this, there's going to be some giveaways. On my Simply Whiskey profile, I have a different type of giveaways, Ardbeg related. Some really, really cool stuff, unique stuff, handmade from Hawaii. So a big shout out back to him. So I guess down to the tasting. I'm so thirsty.
Let's do it. Right. So if you've got a bottle of Ardbeg Anno, time now to, if you've been patient, I haven't. Mine's already open.
Yeah, I opened it while you were talking.
So first of all, this isn't that the best sound?
The sexiest sound in the world,
right? I'm spoiled for choice in terms of glassware. I've got my mini Glencairn from the Ardbeg tour. I've got my full-sized Ardbeg Glencairn, but I might have to use the Ardbeg.
I couldn't find mine. I got two from an event we did a while ago, and I don't know where the hell it went. And it's gonna be easy to spot too. It's green.
It is, right? You'll probably find that someone's using it as like a tea light holder, a candle holder or something.
Yeah.
I'm going to pour a bit in here too so we can see the color. Now, the first thing to note is that actually it's not that dark in color. Ardbeg, we are not in the business of faking it. We are not going to add spirit caramel coloring to our whiskey. So that is the completely natural color of Ardbeg Anno. 3 components. Obviously, the ex-bourbon American white oak is never going to be adding much color to it anyway. If you see Ardbeg 10, that's basically what that first portion is very similar to bring that underlying Ardbeg style to play. Very light in color. Anyone who tells you that you can predict the flavor of a Scotch whiskey from the color of it Not true. Not true in any way.
Yeah.
So very light in color. Obviously, the PX casks have added a little bit compared to the Ardbeg 10.
Yeah.
Shall we
Yeah,
drop
well,
take a
one
note?
little thing, one little interruption. Whiskey Library DC says he's cracking a grooves because he could not find a bottle of NO. So
Oh no! Well,
hey,
hey, I say
hey,
that. Oh no, but that's not bad, really.
put an ounce together in a bottle and ship it over, brother. I have a bottle of that. I have the committee release and the regular one.
Absolutely.
Dare I crack them open? Until I find my second one, I'm not cracking those open. Hey, Steven, how you doing?
Yeah.
There you go. That's the committee. There you go. All right, so nose time.
Okay, so let's just get our nose right in there. And I don't know, maybe I'm just too much of a salty old Ardbeg fanatic, but I find it actually fairly shy and retiring on the nose. There's obviously a lot of smoke there.
Yeah.
But it's not absolutely leaping out.
No, not in your face. Yeah, yeah.
It's not aggressively coming out the glass at me.
I got a little citrus orange zest type of notes too.
There's definitely some citrus notes. You know, one thing that Dr. Lumsden said to me when I first started with the Glenmorangie and Ardbeg company, when he was taking me through Ardbeg 10, he said, you know, underneath all that peat smoke and smoky bacon and all the rest of it, he said, somewhere, David, you'll get it one day. I swear to you, there's this sense of freshly squeezed lime juice in Ardbeg 10. And I thought he was completely mad. And it took me about 3 or 4 years because, hey, that man's got one of the best palates in the world. And I've certainly not got as good a palate as him. It took me a while, but I can get it now. And there is a citrusy note in most Ardbeg, not all, but most Ardbeg.
Yeah.
So that's that. There's definitely that there. Shall we jump straight in and have a little taste?
You know, one more thing I get out of this. I'm a cigar lover. I smoke cigars a lot, and I get almost like a cigar leaf, a very mild cigar leaf.
So if you're getting that, that's great to hear because I think Ardbeg Ugadal, one of the other core releases, being partly matured in sherry casks, I often refer to that key tasting note and nosing profile as being like a tobacco leaf. And obviously here with the Pedro Jimenez cask influence, it's there again. And that was intentionally bringing some of what we'd learned that people really liked about Ardbeg Ugadal back into play, but bringing it in with the citrusy notes from the Ardbeg 10 without losing that core style. Yeah.
Let's dive in.
Let's dive in. There's immediately
cheers, by the way.
honey as well. Cheers, yes.
Cheers, salute. Cheers to everybody watching this live and later on. Much appreciated. Appreciated every single follower. I know a bunch of David's followers are on also. Thank you. Nice meeting you. I'm tonight's Poison Jazz. Pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers.
You want to do a toast, actually?
Toast?
You got to have a good toast. I've heard you do your thing before. You have some amazing
I'm
things.
trying to, you caught me off guard. I don't know. Just good old Slangevar, Scots Gaelic Slangevar.
Okay. All right.
Health.
Maybe we'll close with one. All right.
Yeah.
Saliente.
So, you know, it's clearly Ardbeg. There's that, starts off very classic Ardbeg. I get the sense of, on my palate, something almost slightly candle waxy on the sides of my mouth. There's something like, if you've taken in the old days, a bottled pint of milk, when it was left on the doorstep, I am old enough to remember that just. And the cream would sit on the top because it wasn't all homogenized. And that's like the warm cream off the top of the milk. There's something in a lot of Ardbegs that's slightly reminiscent of that. There is that citrus there. We can't escape, you know, the fact that there's a lot of that peat smoke influence as well. But there's more. You know,
I love the sweetness on it.
There's definitely a sweetness. And that's
I love the sweetness. Very delicate sweetness. It's just delicious.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I can see people like Hondo trying it for the first time. I think this might be a good one. It has a peatiness, but it has a sweetness, this delicate sweetness. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, one of my colleagues from Ardbeg, I coined the term the Ardbeg's peaty paradox, that it is a big thumping smoky whiskey, but there is this sweet, round, inviting character in there somewhere. And that's what we've tried to kind of dial up with NO. that sort of round, sweet, inviting character.
It has a chocolateiness to it too, like a dark chocolate, right?
There's
Which I think most of
hits
them
the
do.
back of your palate, like
Yeah.
slightly bitter dark
I
chocolate.
got it later, yeah.
There's a peppery note. Go back on the nose now. And there's this kind of like fresh ground black pepper going on right there.
Yeah, yeah.
And something I get in a lot of Ardbeg is a sense of something like something slightly aniseedy sometimes. A little bit, something
I can see that.
aniseedy.
I can definitely see that.
And then I'm getting hints of, when I'm thinking about the cracked black pepper, I'm getting hints of characteristics that I would say are echoes of things or flavors I get normally from things like Ardbeg Dark Cove or even Grooves a bit. Something like salted cashew nuts, something like that in there as well. What's not to love about that?
Yeah. Happy Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah. It's true.
I think I'm gonna take a flash to work tomorrow.
Hey, come on.
I can in my job, right? In our business, we can. Sometimes we start 9 in the morning.
Yes, I know. I've led many a training session at even earlier than 9 in the morning. It's actually, you know, joking aside, that time between about 9:30 and 11:30, 12 is when most blenders, master distillers, nosers in the Scotch industry do most of their work, because your palate is at its most alive during those hours. You've had time to wake up. You've had your breakfast normally isn't a particularly powerfully flavored meal in most cultures, certainly not in Scotland. And by 9:30, you're in the office or in wherever you're working, and your palate's fresh, it's clean, and your brain is wide awake. After lunch, competing flavors, you're a bit more tired. So the best work is done in the sensory labs in that morning spell, funnily enough. But we don't actually taste, believe it or not, we don't taste a whole lot in the sensory lab. My secondary role is as a kind of junior
A lot of nosing, right?
whiskey creation team. I get to work with Bill when I'm back. I'm going back to Scotland in a couple of weeks, actually. And I'm not sure if I'll get to work in the lab. We're doing other things. But last time I was back in January, I had the opportunity to actually nose through. You can see it on my Instagram feed from about January 9th or 10th, I think, something like that. And I was nosing through samples of every cask of Ardbeg from the 70s that we still have in the warehouse.
Wow.
Checking for quality. I wasn't drinking it. You couldn't drink it all, but nosing them for quality. So I had to look up at one point and just think, I'm getting paid to do this. This is crazy.
I'm sure you were salivating a lot too.
It was a pretty special moment and incredibly fortunate to be able to do that. So if Dr. Bill's watching, thanks, Bill. He's not, because he doesn't have Instagram.
I'm sure somebody will show it to him later.
Yeah, exactly.
Delicious stuff. Very, very delicious.
What do people think about adding a dash of water? I mean, I've got my little
I like doing that.
pipette here. We could always.
I got my pinky.
Finger works just as well. I've seemed to have finished my Ardbeg in that glass, so we'll move over to the second glass. And water, I get asked a lot, how much water should you add to your Scotch whiskey? The answer is however much you want. And that's not trying to duck the question. Trial and error. Every person and every glass of whiskey is different. So I can't tell you how much water to add. I can tell you how much water I might add, and the answer might be different tomorrow. But you don't need to follow me. Test it. The one rule of thumb I do, which an old guy at one of my first tastings back in Scotland when I worked for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, I said about, be careful, don't add too much. And this old guy said, "Aye, that's an easy solution. You can just add more whiskey." I thought, yeah, he's right. Actually, you can. But I would say just be careful. Don't add too. Be careful with it, because adding too much, if you don't have more whiskey to add, you've diluted it down. There's no coming back at that point.
Yeah.
Ooh. Hasn't it changed with a dash of water though? It's actually a bit more on the nose for me.
Yeah, opened up more, definitely, for sure. I guess that's what it does. So I get a lot more sweetness on the nose.
On the nose, it hasn't softened it. It's actually made it a bit more full on the nose.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see what it does on the.
It grabs you more.
Now, adding a dash of water when you drink it, I'm getting a lot more of that kind of sooty, mucky, slightly coal dusty note coming through. That's some of the classic Ardbeg 10 characteristics. And as I'm talking, I'm getting a lot of that kind of saltiness and the kind of cashew nut thing that makes me think of some of the aftertastes on Ugadal again. So
I get that a lot more after the add additional water than I did before. You're right.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to do. And remember, you know, it's a very divisive subject, adding water, certainly adding ice. But remember, in sensory labs all over Scotland, the guys and ladies who are making these whiskies are definitely adding water to the samples as they're creating them, to nose and taste them. And they're fascinated by seeing how the structure and flavor changes. And it's fun to play that kind of role. So I would strongly recommend just to add to the enjoyment, a little dash of water and see how it changes.
Yeah.
Good fun.
Hey, part of my interruption, but you see who just joined. You remember, Trent from Lloyd Hennessy?
Yes. I know.
Look at that.
Hey, Trent. How are you?
Hey, for those of you guys watching and listening, I know we're tasting amazing whiskey, but if you want to try an amazing tequila, try look this up, called Volcan, Volcan. Amazing tequila. They have a Blanco and a Cristalino, just phenomenal. Unfortunately, for those of you watching, you can't just go anywhere and purchase this bottle. It's very, very rare to find this because they're basically rolling it out only into exclusive. Usually restaurants and bars like New York City would have it, Chicago would have it, LA would have it, but really, really exclusive tequila. Amazing.
I think where I just was, where I was enjoying some. I think I was in Boston recently and was enjoying some Volcan. Great stuff, mate. Love it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Trent, thanks for joining, man.
I hope you've got a bottle of Ardbeg Ammo there.
Yeah. I'm sure he has enough samples.
I hope so.
He's more of a champagne guy. He's more of a champagne guy. But now tequila. What else, David? Anything else to add to this before we start wrapping up?
Hey, I don't know. I really hope that those of you that went out and got a bottle of Anno and tasted along, and hopefully there's some of you that were a bit on the fence still about Islay whiskey in general and Ardbeg in particular. And hopefully we've been somewhat successful, at least, in creating a whiskey that has still delighted our core fans, but has created a few more budding Ardbeg fans. I think the one true way that if after this you're still not fully there with Ardbeg, what you need to do is you need to come to Ardbeg, and it's a very, very special place, Islay in general, but Ardbeg is a very special place, and great with various, if you're into seafood, if you're into, saying I was in Boston, oysters and Ardbeg is a match made in absolute heaven. Fantastic stuff. I would strongly recommend just trying a few things.
Fantastic. Actually, I'm not going to wait till the very end. I think this is a good leeway towards this about the giveaway. Guys, we have a ton of giveaways, Ardbeg brand related, even my tonight's poison specialty glass here for you guys. What do you got to do to win this contest? Very easy. Grab a bottle if you're tasting one now, take a selfie, and DM me on my Instagram. All right, so if you're watching this afterwards, I'm going to just keep giving stuff out until I run out. So if you're watching this later, you're not on live, just take a selfie with your Ardbeg and send me as a picture. And basically, we're going to be picking some of those and giving out the gifts. I'll DM you back saying you won. David, I do have a contraption here that I acquired through vigorous searches on eBay. And I need for you to talk about it because this is very, very cool. I was so amazed by this when I ran into this 2 years ago. It's an Ardbeg contraption that I had to find it on eBay and purchase it, and I did. I can't tell you where I got it from because I don't want the person to get in trouble because I'm sure these things are not available on the market. It's like a gray market thing, but here he goes. So David, talk about this.
What is this thing? Oh God, no, not that thing. So this was a great idea at the time. I have to caution you that we actually had these recalled for some safety.
It's even rarer than.
There were some safety issues with that, but basically, the idea is that you can atomize actual Ardbeg and without creating huge clouds of alcohol, but it just allows you to almost sense the smell of Ardbeg, and it gives you a much more like the smell that you would get walking around the warehouse of the kind of angel's share more than anything. But
yep.
Yes, there were a few production issues with it. So just be careful. I'll tell you later.
Okay, you tell me later, but I'm going to enjoy this now. And I got this little thing with it. So.
There you go. Oh, God, no, don't do that.
Okay. Okay, we'll talk about the warning signs later. Sorry to bring that up, but luckily it's not out there anymore. So it's this little something rare collectible that I have.
Yeah.
Any closing comments?
Collectibles up here, too.
Yeah, what you want to show off? Not show off, but you want to show us and any amazing rarities over there that will be hard to find?
I've got the very last end bits of this. It's one of my treasured favorites. This was Ardbeg Lord of the Isles back in the day.
Wow.
It's
with a scroll and everything, huh?
Oh, it's a roughly 25-year-old Ardbeg back in the day.
Beautiful.
I had 2 bottles of it, and I drank one of them.
That's what happens when you have 2, you get tempted.
That's what whiskey's for. It's not for flipping.
Yeah.
It's for drinking.
And sharing with your good friends.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
This one's open as well. So technically that's worth nothing now. It's open. But to me, it's worth everything because I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All off there.
What else you got?
This one was
let's let the whiskey collectors over here.
That's the last fish isle bottling before we went to Ardbeg Day bottlings. This was entirely. I think it's a single. Is it a single cask? I'm not sure if it's single cask. Maybe not. It's cask strength. Pedro Jimenez.
Scotch Society says he'll buy it. Scotch Society said he'll buy it. Which one are you talking about, Scotch Society? This one or the last one? Unfortunately, I know David, and no matter what the offer is, I don't think he will sell it. These things are more than life.
I take the opinion that as long as I'm employed by the company, it's not my place to sell bottles. That's first of all, it is illegal.
Hey!
Yeah, there you go. Do you know what? I think I just need to get closer to my Wi-Fi router for about 3 seconds, and then I can come back in here.
Maybe it's the Wi-Fi or the Wi-Fi. I don't know, one or the other.
Well, it's reminiscent of how it certainly used to be on Isla, where
oh yeah. You walk towards the building to get some sort of signal.
Well, I've actually had to do, and cell phone reception, I've actually had to make a call back to the US several years ago now, back to call in for a conference call with the office. And the only place I could do it, I had to stand out on the old pier, and I had to have my earpiece in and hold my phone up like this, point at the mainland and try and get enough signal to listen in. Yes.
So David, I hope you had a good time. I had a great time. I can't wait to go back and listen to everything you said because I was kind of trying to organize and get things together and check out questions. I got a laptop and 2 phones here, so I can't wait to go back and look at it. Would you be interested in doing this again?
Hey, yeah, absolutely, man. And I have a thought. I don't know, and we haven't spoken about this until now. So here, I'll throw this out to you. I'm going to be at Glenmorangie in about two and a half weeks from now. And I'll be there actually taking a couple of guests to see Signet, Glenmorangie Signet being made, the actual chocolate malt working its way through the distillery. Yeah. Now, I think that we now have Wi-Fi at Glenmo that's fast enough that we can attempt this. So what if we tried to do one literally from Glenmorangie Distillery in a few weeks? I don't know.
No, absolutely. There'll be a little time difference, but I would love to do it. We'll figure it out.
Oh yes, yeah, that would be. It might not happen from the distillery, or so 7 p.m. East Coast is midnight. It may be from Glenmorangie House, but hey, we could.
Hey, that's okay.
Or dude, I just literally get someone to drive me back over to the distillery. It's 24-hour operation. We'll do it on the midnight shift from the distillery. What about that?
Let's set it up. I had this whole thing set up for you to try to get to Glenmorangie, so I'm going to do it anyway. So I was going to ask you this. I was going to say, hey, David, if we were to do this again, I'm going to show you a few brands. You stop me when I get to the right brand as the one you want to taste with me again, okay?
Right.
So I'm going to start showing off some stuff, and then you stop me when you see a brand that you want to taste with me next time.
No,
right?
no,
Not yet.
no, none of that. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we can do that. Which one? 1978?
No, yeah, 1978.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my little beauty. But it's not been cracked open, and I don't plan on cracking it open. So,
oh, come on, it's for drinking.
Yeah. No, I missed the Glenmorangie event that you did for us. Unfortunately, I was busy. But you were what, 1974 there? Which one was it?
You've got
one of the older one, the oldest Glenmorangie ever bottled.
Yeah, 74. I think so.
Yep. Awesome, David. Thank you so much for everything. Hey, Michael, how you doing? Thanks for logging in. Check out the video. This video, guys, if you're watching, is going to be posted for 24 hours. Then I am going to save it and put it on the YouTube. One last shout out to David. Thank you so much for doing this. And guys, if you are watching this, if you could take a selfie with an Ardbeg bottle and DM me, send me an image of it. I'm giving away a lot of prizes, including polo shirts like this for ladies and men, and a lot of Ardbeg swag. And we got some glasses we can send you too.
Absolutely.
So make sure you take a little selfie with Ardbeg and show some love to Ardbeg. Thank you so much, David. In our culture, we do this.
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. Cheers, man.
Cheers, my friend. Cheers, guys, for watching. Bye. Until next time. Until Glenmorangie.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.